and we're going to a specialist location for the first time. So we're going to the Pioneer Centre, which is in Shropshire, to be based at a purpose-built facility for the whole week. So gone are treacherous minibus journeys into the centre of London for matinee performances, and instead we have zip lines, abseiling walls, and a variety of other action-packed opportunities. Much of the week will stay the same. So we have a team of 20 pupils running the week, 10 lower sixth, 10 upper sixth. We'll still be hosting 10 male guests that the boys will get paired off with one lower sixth and one upper sixth to help host that. But it's really the bricks and mortar that will be different. And I should say that our relationship with St Helens stays strong in running the week as well. And that the girls team of 27 will be in the centre with us. Separate sleeping accommodations, I've made sure that that's in place as a top priority. And yeah, they're going to have 10 guests as well. So the week won't be based at school. We'll meet at school at 7:25, I think it is, on the Monday morning, and head off to Shropshire for a week of fun. So the week's going to look a bit different, and fingers crossed that'll be the start of a really positive relationship with the Pioneer Centre and create kind of a sustainable week that can continue to get past some of the hurdles that are being put up as the world changes and health and safety takes on ever exciting and new dimensions. Elliot and Alex, two of the upper sixth pupils, are going to act as the hosts for most of the evening. So that was my job of giving some context to what the Phab week looks like nowadays at Merchant Taylors. So Elliot, if I pass over to you, I know you're going to act as MC for the remainder of the evening.
Hi, I'm Elliot, opposite member of the Phab team, and I'm going to be asking Matthew and Nick some questions this evening, which they will hopefully answer and give us some great advice and share some of their experiences with us. So my first question for the two of you is, how would you sum up your experience of Phab at MTs? Matthew, do you want to go first, or? Yeah.
Yes, I'm happy to go first. Certainly, I mean, one of the most memorable things I did at school was being involved in Phab. You know, I really enjoyed my school days, and there were many memorable things that we did, but Phab was up there at the top, and gave me some lessons for later life as well. I think it's something that you learn a great deal from. I think, you know, particularly in the 1970s, Merchant Taylors was very middle class, very white, and you didn't come across a lot of difference. And I think the great thing about being involved in Phab that I remember and have learned for later in life is the value in difference and the value in dealing and talking and interacting with people whose life experience is very different from your own. And I think you'll, as the current Phab team, will get a huge amount out of that. It's not just about being there and entertaining and looking after people with disability, but you learn yourselves from it, and you know, it's about being with them rather than being there for them. You're being with them, and you get a great deal out of that. I mean, I think it was probably a very different experience from what you'll have certainly in the centre this year. To pick up on what Matt's saying about health and safety didn't really exist in those days. So, you know, we were quite Heath Robinson about the way we organised things. The examination hall was turned into a dormitory for the boys to sleep in, and we were totally responsible for all their needs and their care. and the main activities taking place in the dining room, in the dining hall, and outings, as I think you still have done in recent years, being the main part of the program. Shall I hand over to Nick now for?
Yes, thank you. And over to Nick.
Thanks, Elliot. It's so hard to sum up experience of Phab, and actually, for someone with, we were talking before, for someone with not a great memory, my experience of Phab is still really vivid. It was no doubt, as Matt said, also like one of, if not the highlight of my time at MTs. I think talking about the Phab week itself, which is of course only one part of the overall Phab experience, I think if I had to sum it up in a few words, it would be humbling for many of the reasons that Matt described as well. Really eye-opening. Like if we're honest with ourselves, you know, MTs is a phenomenal place to be, but we're living in a bubble, and being on Phab Week just opens yourself up to meeting so many people from so many different walks of life with a whole range of abilities that we just don't have the opportunity to do like day to day at school. And then in addition to that, the week is just so unbelievably rewarding and fun. Like, let's not forget, it was a huge amount of fun. And if I look back now at the people that I was on Phab Week with, I'm still friends with the overwhelming majority of them 12 years later. And that's on the host side. I'm also really good friends with one of the guests that I looked after. In fact, I actually saw him last week. So it really does create friendships for life. And one thing that I reflected on recently, actually, so for context, I after leaving Phab, I was saying to a few of the folks earlier, after leaving Phab at MTs, I loved it so much and I was so bad at letting go that when I got to university, I decided to set Phab up there, and it's still kind of going strong. We set it up in 2011, and so 11 years later, there's a Phab kind of predominantly staffed by university students at Nottingham, and we shamelessly stole a lot of the great work that had been done at MTs to help set it up. And a few years ago, we started doing our own residential weekend, very similar model to what you're doing this year with the Pioneer Centre. And one thing that struck me was looking at the university students, who obviously are a few years older than the sixth formers at MTs. The level of confidence of those students with the members, don't get me wrong, was great, but really made me realize quite how strong the Phab team was at MTs. And I'm not just kind of biased and talking about my year. I have come back like quite a few years subsequently, and it's really clear that it is part of the skills that MTs teaches you more holistically really come to the fore in Phab Week. And it was really noticeable for me, despite the fact that the students there that are hosts are a number of years younger than those that are university students at Phab in Nottingham. Their ability to work with the members is on a par, if not better, because you're leveraging all of those skills that the school teaches you more broadly, whether that's through like the teamwork that you learn as sports teams, some of the, you know, the rigor in the academic sense, and the friendships that you've built with all of your peers, you just really come to benefit from when it comes to Phab Week, and all of that comes together. So yeah, I feel like I started by saying I'd summarize it in a few words, and I did more than a few, but hopefully my, I guess, joyous experience of Phab Week comes through.
That's great, thanks. Thank you for sharing that. It's great to see how passionate you are about Phab and what you've done for it. My next question for Matthew, I know your memory, you talked about your memory before, but if you could maybe say one highlight that you had from the week that we might be able to look forward to something similar. That'd be great if you could share that.
One memory from the week. One thing that really does stick in my hand, and it's probably something you wouldn't do now, was racing wheelchairs underneath the Thames at Greenwich, in the tunnel at Greenwich. And it was absolutely mad and crazy, but it was an amazing time. And, you know, everybody had, you know, huge smiles on their faces, despite the fact that they were being rushed along in the chairs as fast as our legs could carry us. So yeah, I mean, that's just one particular occasion where just great fun had by everybody. But it wasn't unique, and just playing uni hock in the dining hall or whatever was also great fun, and being able to laugh at yourself, you know, whether you were disabled or you were fully abled. Just being able to laugh at yourself in those situations where, you know, you're playing a silly game of hockey or something, and you know, falling over or whatever, was just part of it. But yeah, the wheelchair race was one of the most memorable things, I think.
Same for you, Nick.
My highlight came to me quite quickly. I'm not entirely sure why, but I always have a fond memory of this, which is in my first Phab week, I was paired with a guest called Dexter, who actually was the guy I was referring to before, who I'm still good friends with. He, by the time I got to my first Phab week, he was a bit of a Phab veteran. He'd been on quite a few Phab weeks beforehand. Now, for context, Dex has cerebral palsy, and he uses a wheelchair to get around, and he has a bit of a speech impediment. So still very much getting used to that day one, sitting down for lunch. And we're there for our first day together at lunch, and I'm there helping him to have his lunch when he starts choking. Now you can imagine, it's like day one, it's my first time on Phab. I've never met this guest before, and within a matter of seconds, I'm up out of my chair behind him, ready to administer the Heimlich maneuver that I'd only been taught by the nurses that morning. And as I'm about to like wrap my arms around him, he just starts writhing with laughter. Thinking like, what on earth is going on? And of course, this guy has the most phenomenal sense of humor, and he's just having me on. He's done that before. He knows I'm a nervous newbie, fresh out of training, and he's just completely taunting me. And that, I mean, I still joke about it with him to this day. But if that wasn't enough, a few days later, we've gone swimming for the first time, and I clearly haven't learnt my lesson, because I'm there on the side and he's in the water, and he starts floundering around. 10 seconds, I've stripped down to my boxers. I'm about to jump in and catch him. And of course, he's having me on again. He's completely fine. And he's gone, he's an idiot. He hasn't learnt his lesson the first time. He's going to do it again. So from that day to this, I've never trusted him. But it always sticks in my mind as a fond memory as to how exploited I was by him.
That is definitely something you'll remember. That is funny. Yeah. My next question is, because obviously there's a lot of difficulties that you encounter on the week. So was there a particular difficulty or something that you had to do over the week which you had to overcome during your time during Phab week?
I think the thing that was initially a shock was the way you had to look after the people, and I don't know whether this is still the case, but basically we were looking after all their needs and you know, getting them up in the morning and putting them to bed, and there's sort of it could be quite an intimate care that you're providing them with, and I particularly remember looking after a young guy with spina bifida, who needed bags changing and all this sort of thing. And that was initially for, you know, when you're a teenager, that's initially a bit of a struggle to get to grips with, but you do. And you know, I think with a mutual sense of humor, it soon becomes a very easy relationship between you and the person you're taking care of in that way. So I think that's probably the only thing I, you know, would have said I found difficult about it. But it soon went, and you know, it's then part of a great experience along with everything else. Yeah, and overcome with humour generally, as Nick's highlighted with Dexter there. It's
Great, that's great, thank you.
So I think for me, in terms of like difficulties I overcame, in my second year of Phab Week, I was paired with a new member who was had very limited physical abilities, and was also something up with my mic. Can everyone hear? Can you hear me okay, Elliot?
Yeah, I can hear you all right now. Yeah.
Ah, okay, good. So I was paired with this new member who wasn't able to communicate verbally and had very limited physical abilities and really struggled to sleep, particularly like if they woke up during the night and they saw unfamiliar faces. And so what that meant was, for the first couple of nights, I didn't sleep at all. Whenever that member woke up, someone would come and wake me up, and I would be there and I'd help him get back to sleep. And then he was a very light sleeper. Something would happen, half an hour later he was up again. And at 2 days into Phab Week, I was exhausted. And I was just struggling to function, and I knew I needed to, but there weren't enough Red Bulls in the world to keep me awake. And what I remember, the then equivalent of Matt took me to one side and was like, "Nick, what are you doing? You can't be doing this. Like, it's not sustainable." And I was like, "No, but like my job here is to provide, as Matt was saying, like fully care for this person, whatever they need, any time of the day." And he said to me, "Yes, but the best way you can do that isn't always to do everything yourself." And for me, it took me a little while and almost emotionally to adjust to it, because I felt very responsible. But I realized that the best way that I could care for this guest was actually to kind of train others in terms of what they needed to do, to rely on the rest of the team, to make sure that they had all of the notes about his medication, the tips and tricks in terms of how to get him back to sleep. And not only did that mean that this guest was able to have a better time because he wasn't dependent on someone coming to wake me up every 5 minutes, but also it meant I was much more effective as a host because I'd had a few hours sleep. And I was, I don't run very well on 1-2 hours sleep. So I'd like to think I was also a better companion to him for the rest of the week, by, allowing myself to depend more on the team. So for me, that was, it took a while to adjust to it, but ever since then, and for the rest of that week, I really appreciated the value of having a team around me, because everyone's dealing with different challenges during that week. But the great thing about Phab is generally that you can rely on your peers.
That's great to hear. Thank you for sharing that. Sort of a follow-on question from the difficulties that you faced. You've spoken about what you've done to overcome that, but what advice could you offer, especially those of us in the current Phab team for this summer and for our week away?
I guess I'd say abandon all preconceptions. So you're going to have preconceptions about what you're doing, and you've been very much tied up with all the organizational elements and raising funds and all that sort of thing. And I think, as I tried to say earlier, I think it's, don't see yourself in the role of looking after or caring for someone, but see yourself as being a fellow participant in an experience. And you know, that means, as I think Nick was saying about not sleeping, it's, you're there to enjoy it as well, and by enjoying it, the people around you will enjoy it as well. So I think yeah, don't try too hard. Just enjoy what you're doing, and I think, you know, it'll be a fabulous experience. And I think with the facilities you've got at the centre, I think it's going to be absolutely tremendous.
Great. Thank you. That's great advice for us all to have.
So I would definitely echo what Matthew said. I think also, for me, probably one of the biggest pieces of advice I would give is, Phab is as much about building relationships with the guests and building relationships with the rest of the Phab team, as it is about learning how best to care, in inverted commas, for a particular guest. And in large part, that's because one of the things I learned was it's so much easier to care for someone when they trust you, because you've invested that time in building the relationship, and that you understand them. You understand what they want, what they like, what they don't like, etc. And you know, when we provide care on Phab Week, we're not doing it in a medical setting. It isn't a science. Now, there's certainly some important, you know, medical elements that we need to consider, particularly when it comes to medication and other health and safety points. But a very large part of it is more art than science, and it's about investing the time in building that relationship, so that you do build that trust, you build that relationship, and ultimately, if you have that trust, everything else will come from it. That guest will feel really comfortable in telling you what's working for them, what's not working, when something's hurting, when they don't like something, whatever it may be. And you'll also be able to, you know, if you do something wrong, it's fine. If you have that trust there and you have that relationship, you can laugh about it. If I think back to the number of times I messed up to redoing someone's nappy or something like that, because hey, I hadn't done it before, but I had that trust with the member where I was able to go, hey, I messed up, and they were able to laugh at me. And yeah, it wasn't elegant, but we got there in the end, and it didn't matter. The member didn't mind, the guest didn't mind, because we had that relationship there already.
Great, thank you. I'd like to I've got a few more questions to ask, but if anyone would like to ask a question to Matthew or Nick, or even an OMT could give their thoughts and their advice to us to the question about what advice you give, please feel free to ask anything or to speak.
Hi, my name, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, so my name's Quentin English. I put my years there. I was at MT's in the early 80s and had the privilege of participating in Phab, and it was amazing. And I actually went on later when I moved to Paris after I graduated university, and I got involved with a really similar organization there, very similar in that it was also, there wasn't much health and safety going on. We just took people out and we used to go visit the chateaus in the Loire Valley with them and stuff. And it really was amazing. And a couple of things that I think it's, I guess, in the line of advice was that, and this is kind of a mixture between my experience in Paris and doing Phab, because it's very similar, but I think often the physically handicapped people, sometimes in the other environments that they live in a day-to-day, they can be kind of talked down to a little bit, or even babied a little bit. And one of the things that I remember that they really used to like was just to be treated like normal people, like, you know, made fun of, teased, you know, like, just, and that I don't know, something about that, making them feel normal, and one of the fun crowd kind of thing really was good for them. I remember, and somehow, if you can give them their dignity back as well. Like I remember I used to take this woman, I think she had MS, and she couldn't use her hands, and I would like help her eat. And just, it's a little thing, but she used to like, I would get the food on the fork, and then she'd sit there like with her mouth open, waiting for the food to go in. And I used to just make fun of her. I was like, what are you, a fish? You know, like she was physically handicapped, but she didn't have to look like a, she didn't need to do that. I kind of was like, you just open your mouth when the food gets there, you know? And she used to, I used to make fun, like tease her, and she'd laugh. And so I think that's a really a big thing that you can do for them. The other thing that you may encounter, and I don't know how you deal with this, but it's, if there's maybe you can come up with a better way than I did, but it's very often you'll see that they heap gratitude on you. That it's so amazing for them to come out of their usual environment and go do this, that they just feel incredibly grateful. And what you'll probably feel, and what I used to feel, was, you don't get it. I'm just as grateful as you are. I'm getting just as much out of this as you are. So, you know, I don't know how to express that, because I used to try to express it. But it is something that you'll feel, and hopefully you'll feel it. Like it really is a two-way thing. It's not like you're doing all this for them and not getting anything out of it. You'll get just as much out of it as they did. And I'm in New York right now. I just got this email. I was like, I got like tearful almost thinking about my experiences 30 years ago. It really was, it just was amazing. And one other thing I would say is, like, you know, we all go through ups and downs in life, but the experience of seeing how other people live and the challenges they go through will give you perspective if bad things happen to you. Like, you know, I've had ups and downs in business, and it really helps to just have some perspective. Like, even if it's just like, hey, in the morning I can get up and walk to the other room without assistance. You know, like sometimes it's just good to appreciate the little things that you have, because you shouldn't take, it'll show you that you shouldn't take them for granted. So that's my piece. Anyway, enjoy. I'm really delighted to know that it's still happening. The fact that it's not happening in the school and kind of like by the seat of your pants is a little bit, it's probably a good thing, but it was really fun just like having the run of the school to ourselves to kind of go crazy in between the study time. That was I remember that being really fun too, but I'm sure you'll have fun in the center you're going to too.
That's really great to hear. Thank you. I think we're going to take that advice on board. I think Mr. Flower has a question that you'd like to ask.
Yeah, one of the issues that I've come across in the last couple of weeks is we've launched the week for this year and kind of marketed it to parents, is that the parents are quite apprehensive, especially after COVID, I think, to let their children come on the week. So I wondered kind of what your advice might be, having been on the week and seen all the great things, about how I can best articulate to the parents why they should trust us to look after their precious children.
Just to check. So firstly, are you able to hear me okay? Because I heard there were issues with my mic. Excellent. Is the parents we're talking about, are they parents of potential guests or of hosts?
Yeah, the parents of the guests. Because I was always like hopeful that, you know, these families are when we run the club, the families are always so grateful that it gives them an hour and a half respite a fortnight where they can switch off. And then many of the parents said to me in relation to, you know, the Phab week, well, I've never left them alone before. And I've tried to reassure them that the week will be a roaring success, and they won't, you know, think for a second about what their child's up to at midnight. They'll be fast asleep, relaxing and recuperating. It's just trying to put their anxieties to one side, I guess. And whether there's any words of wisdom from your experience that might help how I communicate the benefits of the week back to the parents.
I have a couple of thoughts. One is, I mean, firstly, it's unsurprising. I think there's the one element of it, which is there's a way that you can facilitate the members, the guests. Sorry, I keep calling them members because that's what we call them in Nottingham. But a way that we can facilitate the guests meeting the prospective hosts in advance. My guess would be, and I haven't met all of your team, but I'm sure they're all awesome, and actually they'll sell themselves. And whether or not that might help to put some of the parents at ease a little bit, because it is daunting to hand your child over to somebody that you've never met before. It is a huge expression of trust, and particularly for a parent that's never done that before, like, it can feel quite nerve-wracking, particularly in the light of the last couple of years. So I think if there's a way to do that, I don't know if it's possible, but that could be one option. One thing we used to do in the past, I don't know if you still do, is we didn't actually meet them, but we did send like short bios of each of the sixth formers to the parents in advance. They felt that element of kinship. And I guess nowadays with things like Zoom, you know, maybe you could even do an instruction over Zoom ahead of times. And then I think there's probably a bit of a tactical element, which is I've certainly found in, like, when we do our residential weekend in Nottingham, reassuring people in terms of the level of support that will be available during the week in terms of first aid and mitigation plans if someone does get COVID, etc. And I'm sure you've got all of that. Then I think that helps as well, just to alleviate the concerns. Like, what measures have you got in place, and being really transparent about it. And for me, it's a combination of the two. It's like, be transparent about what you're going to do if it does happen, so that you know you've thought it through, and then getting them excited and reassured by actually meeting the people that their children will spend the week with. And hopefully a combo of the two would help.
Yeah, I very much endorse what Nick said. A couple of other points. I think, I mean, one of the things you've got to point to is the reason we're here today is it's 50 years. So you've been doing it for 50 years. You know, that's a great track record. The fact that you're going to a purpose-built centre rather than the school is also something that you can point out. I don't know tactically whether you're able to get a parent of somebody who has sent their child in a previous year to be able to act as an advocate for you if they're able to. That might be great. And I think the other thing to point out is that actually the parents need respite. You know, that looking after somebody who has a disability is a full-time thing in many cases. And, you know, it can be good for them to have some respite and to recharge their own batteries in order to be able to continue that work after the week's finished. So I think
that's great. That's great advice. Thank you very much. Back over to you, Elliot.
Thank you. So this week on Friday, we are having the Phab review. I don't know how far back this tradition goes. Nick's smiling. So we're looking forward to it. It's the first one in 2 years. Can you give us some experiences or anything that we should look out for leading up to it? If you don't know what the Phab review is, it's this huge sort of party that we throw with live performances from students, DJing, and all of that great stuff. So yeah, if you have anything you can tell us about that.
I think I'll have to leave this one to Nick, because either I don't remember it, and that's either because it didn't happen or it was so good that I don't remember it. But so I think I'll have to leave this one to Nick, I'm afraid.
Sure. I'm really glad to hear it's still going. I'm out of interest, like what's the format of it? Because I imagine it's probably quite different to when I was there.
So we're taking over the drama studio, and we have 150 people for years 10 and 11, and the same for years 12 and 13 from St Helens as well. And yeah, we've got quite a few performances from different students, and our in-house DJ Rash, who's part of the team, is going to give us his mixes.
Very cool. Okay, it sounds not dissimilar. I'll share one piece of small advice and maybe a funny memory. So I spent Phab kind of quite got a fond place in my heart. I spent a couple of years like responsible for organising it, which was great fun. I'm terribly unmusical, so this is the closest I'll ever get to being Simon Cowell. So it was great. I think one lesson I learned was the importance of getting your timing right. We ran way over because all of the bands decided to play encores, which we thought was great. But I remember getting to the end of one of the sets, and this band like stopped, and then the whole crowd were like, "No, we want more, we want more," and so they kept playing. Fair enough. But what we didn't realise was that there was in the license agreement the school has, you have to stop playing loud music after a certain time, and we were very much at that slot. And so the master who was in charge at the time had to run onto the stage, and it was this funny image of he didn't really know what to do, so he decided that he was going to pull the wires out of all of the amps, but he didn't really know which wire led where, so he was just running around just pulling every wire that he could find, and it was all a bit chaotic, but there we go. My piece of advice: save Mr. Flower having to do that, and get your times right. And I guess the funny memory I would share is, I don't know if you do the same, but we used to do auditions, and I guess this is probably a safe place to say it in, but we in 1 year we had a very limited number of submissions from St Helens for one reason or another, and when we reviewed the list, we realized, it's not very equitable in terms of like number of entries from MTs and number of entries from St Helens. So we felt like we needed to even it up a bit. And so we forced the St Helens Phab committee to put together, and they sang, come back to me, some really cheesy song. And they came to the audition, and honestly, it was terrible. They were all out of tune, and half of them didn't know what they were doing. Half of them were doing one dance, and half of them were doing another. And we were like, oh God, we actually have to put them in, and they're terrible. And so we did. But what we did, and I'm still good friends with those girls. I actually don't know if they know this. We turned half their mics off, so they all thought they were singing. But there was only really 3 of them, and we were very selective about which 3. So I don't want that to be a piece of advice. Hopefully you don't need to use it, but it was certainly a memory I won't forget.
Yeah, hopefully it all runs smoothly on Friday. We're all looking forward to it a lot. Maybe Matthew, you could talk about other fundraising activities that you might have done to help raise money for the week. Yeah,
I have to be honest and say I don't remember. I wasn't part of the core committee organising the fundraising, and I don't remember how it was done. So sorry to be so blunt, but yeah, I can't really help you with that.
No, that's fine. That's fine. Some of the stuff we were doing this year, we did a marathon walk last Sunday. So some very sore legs last week, and half marathon as well for some of us the week before. So had a busy few weeks for Phab, and hopefully round it off nicely with the Phab review on Friday. I have one more question, I think. Did anything take you by surprise during the week? Something that you weren't expecting, maybe, that sort of maybe not shocked you, but made you really aware of something?
I'm not sure that anything did really. I think, as I say, I think my preconceptions of what it was going to be like probably changed, and you know, went from the preconception where we were going to be really just caring and looking after these people to the guests to one where it was very much a shared experience, and you learnt a lot from just being with people who had a very different life experience from you, and I think that's been very helpful in later life. I've done quite a lot of work through charities with people who are homeless, and you know, spent a lot of time with them, and again, treating them as normal and as the same as you is incredibly important for both sides, and you gain such a huge amount out of it. So I don't think any great surprises, but you know, a tremendous learning experience, and one that will benefit you for the rest of your life.
I think for me, being really transparent, if you'd have asked me before Phab Week, I would have said I thought I was a very open-minded person. I didn't judge people based on what they looked like or anything like that, and I was, you know, pretty liberal and open to, you know, meeting and understanding people from all sorts of walks of life and backgrounds and whatnot. And I think MPs does a great job of teaching you that. I realized at the end of during my first Phab Week, that even though I liked to think of myself as somebody that didn't do that, the reality was there were occasions where I wrongly judged people based on what they looked like. And for example, would assume that just because someone was in a wheelchair, it meant that they couldn't do X, Y, or Z, which in many cases was nonsense. People could, for example, use a wheelchair for a whole bunch of reasons, and it doesn't in any way mean that they speak any differently, think any differently. I mean, I remember one week we had a guest who was in a wheelchair, but he was a Paralympic table tennis player. I mean, thinking about like ability, he was way up there. You know, so I really learned not to do that. And one small moment that stuck with me was when I took that guest Dexter that I was talking about before. We used to do like tea at one of the host's houses during Phab Week, and we went to visit one of my friend's parents at their home, and their mother, who was lovely and didn't mean anything by it, but when we got there, instead of saying to my guest, Dexter, like, would you like anything to drink? She said to me, what would he like to drink? And you know, she meant it in the nicest possible way. She wanted to make sure that she got him whatever he wanted. But he Dexter's quite blunt, just spoke up and went, I can speak for myself. Why do you think Nick knows what I want to drink? And it was just one of those small moments where you go, yeah, she just looked at him and no bad feeling at all, but just assumed that because he looked a certain way or because he was in a wheelchair, that he wouldn't have been able to communicate. And like she very quickly realized her assumption was wrong, but it's always stuck with me.
Thank you for answering that question. I've had a few questions in. One from Harry Bridgewater asking, how can we get involved in Phab in the future? I know that you've set up a Phab club in Nottingham, Nick, but is there any other ways that we can stay connected to the charity?
Yeah, definitely. Really good question. I mean, I obviously have a biased view. I would say, like, come to uni in Nottingham and come join Phab Nottingham, but that might not be true for everyone. I would say that I'd recommend, like, if you go on the Phab website, phab.org.uk, you can see where all the clubs are around the country. They're not all the same as MTs. Like, some of them are a little bit more like the Phab club that you operate, and there are other university Phab clubs across the country. So I definitely recommend, like, go on the website, look it up, reach out to the team in Phab head office. They're all super friendly and helpful, and they can help direct you to your nearest Phab club, and you can go get involved there. Or you could do what I did, and if there isn't one near where you are, go set one up. Having done Phab Week, you will have a great set of experiences to build on that you can leverage for Phab Club elsewhere. So yeah, that would be my my punt at it.
Thank you. Matthew, do you have anything to add, or maybe just charity in general? I know you said you worked with a homeless charity.
Yeah, I mean, I think Nick's right. I mean, websites are the best way to find out information on charities, and they're always looking. Any charity is always looking for volunteers to help in so many different ways. So, and you will have an enormous amount of experience after the week. Yeah, I applaud Nick in setting up his own branch, and I think that's something that many OMTs would be able to do after Phab. Got both the experience from Phab and also the acumen that the school gives you. So go ahead.
Yeah, that's great. Thanks. I've had a couple of more questions about the relationships that you had with the guests during the week and how they developed during the week, and whether they extended past the week and even for many years after. So to go, either of you?
Yeah, I think there's I remember being very nervous initially with somebody you were quotes looking after, but throughout that week it does generate into a genuine friendship, and you do have quite a close bond with that person. I think there's a difference between the 1970s and the 2020s, and that's social media and all the other ways that you can keep in contact with people afterwards that weren't available in my time. So I think it was very much more difficult for us in those days to continue that relationship beyond, but you have fantastic opportunities now to do that, and I'm sure you will, as Nick has done with Dexter and others. I think they will become friendships for life, just as you have friendships for life with fellow pupils at school.
Yeah, I'd echo what Matthew said. You're spending like you would with anyone, right? You spend an intense week with a group of people. Of course, like, you develop strong relationships, and you are sharing an experience which so few people have experienced, and which is an incredibly bonding thing to do. And I think I mentioned earlier, for me, off the back of that, I'm still very good friends with a number of the boys and the girls that I was on Phab Week with in terms of hosts. I know I'm still in touch with both of the guests that I was paired with, and I know a number of the other hosts in my year and the years around are also in touch with theirs. And occasionally in the past, we've done like meetups of various kinds. I think for me, what's really surreal now is like I'll go to the pub with Dexter and have a pint, and I find that just a weird thing to get my head around. But he's 28, and he can drink me under the table, so what not?
Great, thank you. Hopefully we'll have this all to look forward to in our week. That's really it from questions from me. I think I'd just like to say a huge thank you to Matthew and Nick for agreeing to talk to us today. I think we've all benefited from the current Phab team so greatly from it, and hopefully the other OMTs and people who joined the call can start thinking back of their memories, of the fond memories of Phab and how it's been for them. So a huge thank you for you. And it's a great way to celebrate the 50th year of Phab. I have the link for our Just Giving that we've been using this year, which I can put in the chat for everyone, which is all goes towards our Phab week. And anyone who'd like to stay on the call or sort of say anything to the Phab team who might stay on for a few minutes, you can welcome to do that. But if not, I hope everyone has a great evening. And I think that is it from me. So thank you again to Matthew and Nick and to everyone who asked a question. It was really great to hear from you.
Very welcome. Thank you for inviting us. It's just brilliant to see like Phab still going strong, and really excited to kind of hear how your first Phab Week offsite goes. I'm sure it will go brilliantly, and very best of luck with it.
Yeah, just echo that again. I mean, yeah, great to see that it's still going and going from strength to strength. The numbers involved, and the way it's now so professionally run is great to see. So good luck to you all. I hope you really enjoy it and gain an enormous amount from it. Thank you to the staff, Matt and his team who keep this thing going from year to year. Their involvement and enthusiasm for it is amazing. So that's something I hope you as a team will all reflect on, and yeah, enjoy.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Nick.